Okay, so batch 561 is done. So we're getting ready for batch 562. So it's all defrosted after the hamburger. And again, the full tray of ground beef, what was 10 pounds, now is far less. I've got about a half gallon of water out of the hamburger batch. Ground beef freeze dries real quickly. This last ground beef was my sister's, and she tends to use a very lean ground beef. Anytime she finds it on sale, the 93.7 percentage ones, she gets that and cooks it up with onions and other vegetables sometimes, and puts it in the pans and gets it ready for freeze drying. And when there's time, she gets them through there. Anyway, that batch is done. Now we're going on to the next one. Probably do refried beans this time. We did a big batch of refried beans, and we still have some of those left. Or chili. Anyway, other things that are already in the freezer. Haven't had to make anything for a while. So we'll get this set up and get it pre-cooling. So we'll get the thermometer back underneath. Okay, and get this in place. And okay, so the drain valve is already closed. We'll get it started. Make sure that there's a ring around the seal so that we don't have any air leaks where we end up with ice buildup. And there's a few places. So I'm just putting a little pallet knife in, giving it a little twist. And up here and right here. I've got a ring all the way around the seal area. So now we know that air isn't going to be going across there and having the moisture from the air freeze along that seal. So now we'll give it some time. I'm going to run it with Customize, which is what I usually do. And start, that gives you a chance to adjust the tray temperature, but I'm not going to worry about it. And continue. And it says it's 66 in there, and the thermometer underneath there says about 71, 72. So I'm not sure of the calibration, but that's close enough. I'll wait until it gets down to at least the temperature of the freezers, and then we'll get stuff loaded in there. I'll be right back. Don't go away. The freeze dryer's cooled now. Now we're going to get things out to put into batch 562. I think I'm going to do refried beans in this one. So let's get them out of the freezer, get them on trays, and then we can get them in the freeze dryer. Let's see what we've got and where. Got refried beans, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like, oh, this has some whole ones, some part ones. So with these two, we should have enough. Oh, and the cold trays. So we'll get the trays out. We'll go get things on there. So we've got the bags of refried beans, and going to get those on there. So these were 1 pound blocks and the half pound blocks. So 1876. Okay. Tray 2. 1868. Tray 3. 1881. Tray 4. 1855. And this other block and half block will go back into the freezer for later. Well, I'm going to try to get thermometers into the second block. So I'm going to just kind of go across this first block, and I'm going to lift it just a little bit. I've got that lifted up a little bit, but that'll be okay. It'll just make it take just a touch longer, but it gives me information about the temperature inside that block, which comes in handy for rewarming later if the machine finishes, if the freeze dryer finishes while I'm not there. All right. So those are ready to go in. Let's go get them in the freeze dryer. 10 pounds ready to go in there. The freeze dryer has been pre-cooling for a little bit more than an hour and a half now. It's more than 15 below zero, more than cold enough for this food to go in there. Let's get them in there. Tray 4 and work our way up. Okay, the thermometer's in the food is showing about 10 degrees, so it didn't warm up much while I was getting it onto the trays. Okay, now make sure we've got a ring around there. Now it'll be done in about 2 days. Until then, we'll be right back. Don't go away. This refried bean batch has been going for about 30 hours, and that counts the pre-freeze and everything. It's been in the final dry for about 9.5 hours, but none of the thermometers are over about 110 yet, and just a couple hours ago they were down around 80. So I'm going to assume it's still not ready yet, and that it won't be ready for 3 or 4 more hours. But I don't want to be up in 3 or 4 more hours and bagging it. So I'm going to take it out now and check it, and then put it back in and give it a bunch more hours, and then take it out tomorrow and bag it after I've checked to make sure that it stopped losing weight. We'll bypass the rest of the time and check it. The pressure's low, and that's good. The temperature's getting up there, but the thermometer's in the food is not that high yet. So anyway, I'm going to bypass the rest of the time with the down arrow. Open the drain valve. So, tray 1, and as I put them back in, I'll switch the top 2 and then the bottom 2. So tray 1. So 1083. Tray 2, 1081. That's amazing how close they are together. So I'm going to put tray 2 up on top and tray 1 down lower. Then tray 3, 1083, and tray 4 is a little bit cooler than the others, but still feels, and that's cool. Those are cool on top. That's a little bit cool right there. 1080. Let's check the middle of one of these to see it before we put it back in. Yeah, that feels cooler. Let's check this one. I'm going to use the thermometer and just put a little dotted line across it. I don't see any wet spots in there, but it is cool to the touch here. So I'm going to bet it's not dry all the way yet. Back in there they go. Tray 3 can come down here, and tray 4 will go up. All right. Okay, we'll get this restarted. I'm sure there's at least a little bit of moisture is still in there. Not positive, but it feels like there's still cool spots. So I'll get it back to drying and give it maybe 5-6 hours, and then check it in the morning. I could let it run all night, I suppose, too. It wouldn't hurt anything either. Anyway, we'll get it restarted. So close the drain valve. I'm going to use more dry time. I closed the valve and continue. Okay, and then I'll add more time. Okay, so I gave it 5 more hours. That should be, well, go ahead and give it 6. Why not? And I'll still have to check it tomorrow unless it doesn't lose any weight, in which case we know it's already dry and we'll use the 30 hours as the dry time. But I think it's going to lose some more weight, and then we won't know exactly how long if it doesn't lose more weight after that. So we'll check it again tomorrow. So it's way later the next day. It's about 1:15. I meant to get this started many hours ago. It's really, really cold in there, so I'm going to rewarm it with the more dry time and make sure that it gets up to temperature before I take them out. Let's see what it says the temperature is. Okay, it says it's negative 56, and that'll start climbing quickly. But that's cold in there, so we'll get it rewarmed. The refried beans have had a chance to rewarm. In fact, it's been off a little while again, but it's still up around 80 or higher, so perfectly safe to take them out. It's been more than 8 hours of dry time since I checked them last night. Of course, it's been more than 17 hours ago. So these should have been out a long time ago to recheck. If they didn't lose any weight from way back then I know that they were dry last night. If they lost weight during this time, which is probable, I still need to put them in for a couple more hours just to double check. I'm sure they're dry now, but I have no way of proving it without that final check. So let's get them out and then get them back in if need be. First, open the drain valve. And we'll get them out and check them. So tray 1. And the tray is starting to feel a little bit cool already, which is not surprising. And it is down from before. 1076. So it's down 7 grams, not surprising again. So I'll put that back in the same spot. And tray 2. 1073. So that's down by 8. Tray 3. And this one's quite cold. It was the one at the bottom. 1072. So it's down by 11. And finally, tray 4. 1071. So of course, since they did lose weight during that time, I'm putting it back in. Unfortunately, I didn't check it in between there. There's very little doubt that it did finish drying somewhere during that time, but without the double check of no weight loss during a period, I have no way of knowing. Maybe it didn't finish and maybe it's still losing weight. It's very unlikely. But I'm going to give it 2 more hours to double check. So, close the drain valve. So drain valve is closed. I'll press continue and I'll restart it now. And we'll be back in a couple more hours. It's been a couple more hours. We can get them out and check them again, make sure that they are dry now, which of course means that they were dry a long time ago. We just don't know exactly when. Using the down arrow to arrow past the remaining time, then open the drain valve. And starting with tray 1, and it's nice and toasty because we took it out while it was still heating. And 1075, 1076, so bouncing between what it was and a slight amount lower, so that should be done. Tray 2, tray 3, hey, that's the same, and tray 4. That's good enough. So get this thing turned off, going to put no defrost. Make it much quieter. We'll get the defrost cycle going. Well, not the defrost cycle. We'll get the defrost fan in place. I don't use the defrost cycle of the machine because I don't want to use the heaters any more than necessary. So I just use this fan, which defrosts it plenty fast for me. Okay. And I'll turn that on in just a minute after we get the time and the power usage. Get these wheeled over to the bagging area first. I used to get asked a lot, how long did the batch take? And if you watch the 50 batch series, you'll know that I tried to include the time in all the batches. However, you'll also know that sometimes the times don't really tell you how long it took, because I would have hours and hours of time where I should have already taken it out, but I didn't get around to it. This is another one of those kinds of things. I don't know when it finished, but it finished sometime between when I checked it last night and now. There was 19 hours between last night and now. So the number here doesn't really tell us how long this batch took. It just tells how long it was in there before I took it out. I'm going to assume it was done closer to the beginning of those last 19 hours, not in the last few hours. I know for sure it wasn't in the last 2 hours because it didn't change. So I know it was more than 2 hours ago. Well, that still leaves 17 hours of time that it could have finished in. So sometime in those 17 hours. I can't tell when it was done. I just know that it was done before 50 hours. That's not very satisfying to know that number, but I'm going to use 50 hours because I know positively it can be done in 50 hours or less. Just like the time, we also don't know how much power we used to actually do the freeze drying, but we know that it's less than 31.78 kilowatt hours. So I'm going to reset that, get it ready for the next batch. It's not perfectly useful because it would have been nice to know exactly how much it took, but then you have to be here and take it out on time. Okay, now to the bagging. Next, we'll get the thermometers out and get them all weighed to find out what they weigh now. Tray 1 with the thermometer out, 1068. 1060, it's going 3 and 4, I'm going to use 3. Tray 3, 1064. These are amazingly similar in weights. Of course, that doesn't take into account that the trays weigh different amounts. 63, 64. I'm going to use 64. Now, we'll check the weight of that product and figure out how much I need to put in each bag. Though I do know that each one of these should have been a pound, and they're awfully close, and I should be able to bag them that way. With the exception of the small blocks, those were a ½ pound. I am going to crumble them up a bit though. So I'm not going to powder them totally. This is what I ended up with. So these were the weights of the tray and all the stuff on the trays when we started. This is the tare weight, what the tray and the paper weighed. And so this is what it weighed, this is what the food weighed when it first started. And it had also already lost about 50 grams while it was in the freezer. And that's pretty normal. If you put stuff in the freezer when it's still warm, it's still losing water, and it's going to lose some of that water into the freezer and turn into frost in the freezer. So it lost about 50 grams before it was ever even put in the freeze dryer. Now, and this part is just for the weight check, so this part just means nothing. It's just a comparison how dry it is and if it's stopped losing weight. So afterwards, there's the gross weight afterwards. That's what the tray and all the food weighed after it's freeze dried. And then if I take this number, subtract out the tray again, then I get how much just the food is. So it's 1,265 grams after it was freeze dried. So since it was 10 pounds to start with, each pound is the equivalent of 126.5 grams now. So one of these blocks should be about 126.5 grams. And there's going to be a teeny bit of variation because I don't get it exact sometimes when I'm putting it into the pan, but it should be close enough for this use. And then I need to put back in 322 grams of water to get it rehydrated the same as it was when I started. So to go with that, I'm using labels again, and I'm trying to use labels more so that I can tell other people how to rehydrate it when I give it to them. So add hot water, and I'll put in the number of grams of water that it needs. And then mix and wait 10 to 15 minutes. And with refried beans, it might not need that much, but it's always safe to give it extra time. So that's what we've got now. So I'm going to do the first one in a quart bag to see if I need a quart bag, but that way I'd rather have it a little bit bigger than smaller to start with to make sure that it ends up working. Now, 562. I'm still going to put the batch number on the bag, even though I'm going to be taping one of these tags onto it. I'm writing the batch number on the bag. That way, if for some reason this label gets lost, I can still refer to my notes on this and know what was in this bag. So there's the amount of water it needs, the 322 grams. I'm going to try to move this block off of here and keep it together. So that will be 1 pound, and this would be a pound. And I'll move this half block off and put it on a different tray with another half block. I'm going to try it this way. And I'm not trying to completely powder it in case there's some bean pieces that are still kind of intact. I don't mind having a bit of texture in it. So that fits really well. I don't, without crushing it even more than that, I don't think I could fit it in a pint bag. So I'll go ahead and do all these in quart bags. So I'll get those done and I'll be right back. So I'm working on the last few bags, last 3 bags. And one of the things I wanted to mention is the quart bags that I've been using for the last couple of years are actually only about 3/4 of a quart. So the new quart bags, you can see they're about 1 inch taller. So these actually will hold a full 32 ounces of water. So that's the maximum you could put in, would be water, because it really fills it up. And this one only holds 24 ounces of water. So my quart bags, when I say that I'm using quart bags, they're not actually a full quart. The new ones will be, but I still have a couple hundred or so of these before I get there. We'll finish getting the last few of these in there. I've got a couple of the half ones. Get these last 2 in there, and then they'll be ready to go into the bins. Got those all bagged in the quart size bag. And again, these quart size bags are not actually a quart. They're only about 3/4 of a quart. And I've known that from the beginning, but they were called a quart. I just call them a quart. And they were up front on the page. They said that they held 24 ounces. So it wasn't a surprise. Now that those are filled, I'll add 300 cc oxygen absorbers to each one and then get them zippered shut and then seal them. So, going to make sure that they're tucked down low enough so that they won't end up in the seal or in the zipper. And I'll kind of move them aside each time so that I don't end up missing one. And I'll press any extra air out that I can. Next, we'll get these sealed. I'm using a impulse sealer. Mine's an Impact brand one. And with these heavy bags, I need to have it turned up to about 6.5. Oh, and the first bag, I'm going to do it twice to make sure it is all the way up to temperature. Hopefully it's not too melty. All right, got a good clean seal all the way across the top. Space for 2 or 3 more tries down below that in case that one has a wrinkle or it looks terrible to me and I want to redo it, or in case I want to cut it off and use some and then reseal it. Get all of these sealed and then we'll get them into a bin. Before we put them into the bins, I will be adding a gross weight to each bag. So if that bag fails, I'll know ahead of time just by weighing it. So this bag's 125 grams, and I'll write 125 G at the bottom of there. So now I've got all the information I need to track it, to know what's in it, and to know if it goes bad later. So I'll get all these done and then we'll move to the bins and get them in. so those all have the gross weights on them now. Now they can go in a bin. Now it's time to put the refried beans into a bin, and I've decided to put them into bin 4 instead of the bins behind me. And the main reason is we have space in a few of these bins, and I thought it would be interesting to find out how much will fit in these. We already know that over 540 pounds will fit in here of wet food weight, but there's room for a couple more batches at least. So I thought it'd be good to top them off and find out what is the maximum, bagging them this way, that will fit into these. The only part that's not going to be precise is that there are a few bags of the eggs from one of the early batches that aren't here, because those were Gary's eggs. So those went back to him, but that was a half a batch. So I'll have to look it up. It was only a few bags of them. And we can kind of account for that by simply leaving that bin a little bit light. So now we'll get those into this bin and we'll be done with that for now. With this bin, there's definitely room for at least a couple of batches. So, and having these tags will be kind of nice. And I've done those some in the past when we're doing quite a few of the same thing, and I should have been doing that more now. And I'm going to switch more and more to that so that when I give any bags away, it'll have the instructions on what the heck to do with the things. So that bin is done, and again have room for at least another batch, maybe 2 in just this bin. So we're moving on. We have a bag of refried beans. This is our oldest bag of refried beans from clear back at batch 77. So over 4.5 years ago. And we'll get the oxygen absorber out. And then I'm going to pour it into a container so we can see it better. And with the older bags and 2, 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, unfortunately, the big thing I'm missing is any information. So I still have the date it went in and what it is, but I don't have anything about the amount, how much water to add, any of those things. But it looks like it was probably 2 cups. I'm guessing it was probably a pound. So I don't really know though. So what I can do, well, so my best bet is probably just to add a little bit at a time and kind of mix it until it seems about right. So I've got some boiling water and we'll just add a little bit. And knowing the weight of this, like I do now, and tracking the weight and putting the amount needed on the bag would be extremely helpful for some of these things, because then you could pour in that amount, or 90% of it or something, put a lid on it, wait and see how it rehydrates, then add a touch more if necessary. And we'll be back. Okay, so, okay, so I don't know how much time I gave that because I kind of forgot about it, so it's probably been a half hour. Pretty thick, so I could add more water. Depends on how you like your refried beans. You like them coated with things or things dipped into them? Is it chipperific?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so now what do you want to do with it? Have a small bowl full of it, add some chips and cheese? Chips. Chips of onions, of chopped onions. So add some refried beans and some cheese. And some chopped onion. Do you want to heat it that way?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Then some onions. And then
Just some cheese.
okay, now all you need is a spoon. Because love it. It reminds me of refried beans.
It's great.
All right.
I'm going to stir it up.
Okay. Do you want what's left in the container? You could just add to it. I've got this little guy here I'm going to do.
Oh, you've got a bowl. Okay.
Yes.
You get a bowl. You get a bowl. Almost.
Do you want some cheese on it? Pintos and cheese. Paste picante sauce. Anyway, refried beans rehydrate very well. Apparently they store very well.
Yeehaw!
They're cheap and easy. Insert sister joke there. Now we're starting batch 556. That's not even right. We already know that over 450, no,